My teacher was an American. His name was Rudi, Swami Rudraananda. He became a Swami in India in 1968 with Swami Muktananda. And after, being the disciple of Nityananda of Ganeshpuri from 1957 until 1961 when he passed. In 1973, Rudy passed away. I lived in Bloomington, Indiana. Bloomington succeeded and moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts.
By succeeding, you just mean kept a group of students together who were able to develop their practices.
Right. And through the entire 70s up until 1982, sustained most of the ashrams that had begun already when Rudy was alive. Mm-hmm. When Rudy died, my experiences, what I was left with was a breathing exercise and a prayer. Those are the most obvious things. I had a personal relationship with Rudy. And some of the quality of which is slightly available in the letter that I posted on my on my Facebook photographs that Rudy wrote me from India in September of 1972. The idea of being a teacher, as the goal of any kind of yoga meditation practice is total bullshit. I think the goal is to be a well-educated, capable, and consistent practitioner. Underlining consistent.
Which takes time.
And if anybody thinks at 24 years old that you have enough life experience that you can teach anybody anything, I say you are a menace to the world.
Coming from someone who started teaching when he was 22
years.
Yeah, just saying.
And I was a menace. And I have no doubt about it.
Rudy asked you to start teaching.
Rudy insisted that I start teaching. I didn't want anything to do with teaching. I'm fundamentally a shy person. I'm very sensitive. I get my feelings, trampled easily. In 1978, Muktananda came into my room one day when I was visiting him, and I was reading a science fiction book, and he asked me what I was reading, and I said, "Oh, that's science fiction," and he said, "Don't read that, read Shaivism." And so I did. And the amazing thing for me was, in reading Shaivism, I discovered, this was in a time when there were very few translations of anything, I discovered that all of the questions that I had about my own Kundalini yoga practice, about my experience of Shaktipat, about my connection with Rudy, and about the world in which I operated in, were all resolved through my meditation practice and the model that esoteric Shaivism made available for me. And in fact, esoteric Shaivism use the same language. Mm-hmm. So I come into esoteric Shaivism, reading Shaivism and particularly Kashmir Shaivism, and I see the language of Kundalini yoga, of energy transmission, and project it into a much bigger model. Mm-hmm. And I think, are you kidding me? I don't have to recreate, the entire wheel by myself. It's already been done. Hallelujah. And because of that, I have continued to, develop that teaching and practice and use it as a base for my own teaching.
And, as I stand from the outside and a younger person who wasn't involved in all of that and look at it, I still take away the necessity of honoring a lineage, of practicing with a teacher and honoring that teacher in that lineage in my practice, and also the real logistics and complications that come along with working with a teacher in a lineage, in community.
spiritual growth has nothing to do with worldly accomplishment. You know, we can have rich, profoundly deep inner lives and still have, and still our worldly karmas will play. Mm-hmm. Our worldly karmas will always be our worldly karmas, but those worldly karmas do not have to be the limit of our horizon. And when we begin to live a life, genuinely live a life of love, then that power, while it doesn't, take away our worldly karmas, transforms those worldly karmas into a profound benefit.
Which is reflected to me in how you've painfully and sometimes extraordinarily gracefully and other times had to deal with a lot of challenges, but this is what you've done, and that was your takeaway from your time with Rudy.
I haven't talked at all about my own challenges with Rudy, because I think for me, whatever my challenges were with Rudy were part of the lesson that I needed to learn of, sort of being a human being and transcending my own ego and my own tensions for the sake of love. The whole essence of Rudy's teaching was take in energy, dissolve tension, grow, and change. And the last part of his life, the last sort of couple of months of his life especially, Rudy was talking, ever more vigorously about his commitment to change, and, which he explained, was really quite ruthless. He was more committed to change than he was to anything and anybody. And if we weren't willing to change with him, then we would all be apart.
Spiritual cannibalism.
So, there you have it.
Well, I know a lot of people, whether you're watching this, have a connection to Rudy or not. Certainly, as you develop a connection in your spiritual practice, obviously, if you want to see how his teachings grew through your honoring of him, it's how I found you, not through Rudy. I found you more through the Shaivism and more through the practices that you developed after his death.
There was an emerging strand of Tantric Buddhist practice in Rudy's work, an event that we called the Tantric class, that, I went on to explore, and, in the process of exploring, ended up meeting Lama Wangdu, studying for 18 years with him, receiving, a lineage transmission and all empowerments in a number of practice traditions, one overarching practice tradition and a number of practices. And, all of that work of merging, Hindu Tantrism and Buddhist Tantrism, really came out of my experience of Rudy and the extraordinary fusion of Hindu and Buddhist practices that was spontaneously erupting through him.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of thinking. It's non-linear, the lineage.
I know, it was a moment in time which was truly creative and extraordinary, and I think that our existence here today is an extension of that creative and extraordinary, which I am working to make ever more increasingly relevant to the future. For a while, it's been my idea that the whole world is going to change and be a different place because of climate change, as well as population levels and the pollution and extreme resource consumption that these populations generate. And in order to be sustainable, it's going to be really a completely new cultural model that needs to evolve. Being focused on our own work is an ego trip that, is very different than taking responsibility for yourself and your life taking responsibility for your own mistakes. And doing my own work becomes an ego trip, which then causes us not to recognize that we are intimately interconnected with every other human being on the planet, and our work only succeeds to the degree that there is a flow within us and among those people whom we share our lives with, that reaches not just to the boundary of that personal network of connections, but it has to reach out and embrace the whole of humanity. While everybody needs to do their own work, we also, in doing our work, need to rise to the level where we appreciate that, that work does not happen in isolation. Mm. And if we are coming to understand Rudy's core teaching of energy and flow, then it's really necessary, and he would say it's necessary to release and transcend tension. I would say that now, as I'm aging and the people who have created the New York school are aging, and the people who are copying me, because that's what the people in the Midwestern school are doing, is copying me. Those people, as we're aging, it would be really a good thing if we dropped all the bullshit and, sort of had a conversation about making our work more meaningful as it moves into the future beyond us. Because I feel like, leaving this world with these tensions still in play really only guarantees that the extraordinary work which Rudy has done, which he did, the extraordinary work that I've done, the extraordinary work that, all the people have done in their lives to develop themselves to the degree that they have and promote these teachings will be completely lost.
Yeah, how beautiful to look at the honoring that whichever Rudy's school you're in, if these people are still in it 40 plus years later and doing their practice, there is still a conversation, there is still a connection, there is still a possible way to honor the shared lineage.
Yeah, well, one would think that were possible, but I believe that, the takeaway that people had, that Rudy broke with Muktananda, is sort of become the justification for, the idea that there is no lineage, and there shouldn't be.
I don't know. You mentioned the breathing practice. Was Rudy's prayer, "We're in this world to grow"?
Something close to that.
So it's time to grow.
Time to grow.
We can hold on to our tensions and get fixed in a state of what was in 1973, or do what Rudy asked and grow.
Exactly right. Maybe we're 70 years ahead of our time. Maybe, but I can guarantee you that, all of the technology and the electronic technology which has caused people to become distant from this sense of connectedness and community, and all of the commercialism, manifest in corporate yoga even, that has caused us to increasingly take our information off the internet, where it is absent a context instead of, from living human beings. I think this is all going to change. I think we are in desperate need of a new culture, which will come. I think that, pollution and climate change are going to bring about extraordinary changes in the world, which, in which human beings will only survive if they have a new and sustainable model of community, which, our way of life, right, our total way of life, has embraced and is expressing.
Those of you who don't know, the movement center in our community that Swamiji and about 50 or 60 other people have been together building for 4 decades now, it exists, it is here, and it is, as I am a young one, not so young, but newer member of witnessing the change and the appreciation of where you've come from a plane crash in 1973 as a 22-year-old student to this exquisite community that has stayed together and grown together and practiced together and evolved. Well, that's it's there are no words for how unbelievable it is, and that everybody watching this can have an experience here is a gift that I hope you all get to come and enjoy soon.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks, Heather.
Thank you for the transparency.
Yeah, thanks.
Spiritual growth is a tricky path to navigate. Nobody gets through it in a smooth, perfect way.
Well, and I think the main thing, though, is, it's all about growing love.
Yeah.
It's not about growing your fucking bank account. And it's not about inflating your ego. It's about love and service. And if you can if you can do service and learn love, then whatever your karmas in this world will be, will ultimately grow you, not destroy you.
And you will find that hopefully in these episodes with us in News from the Heart. Please check out the other talks that Swamiji does from the meditation hall. And if you're able to, come and visit us anytime. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again on our next episode.